How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Chav Tes, Daf 29 of Masechta Shevuos. Friends, your friends. Today we finish the third parak of Masechta Shevuos. Tomorrow we start the fourth, and the fourth being Shevuos Ha'edus. But today we're finishing up the third parak, Shevuos Shtayim, and we're going to talk a little bit about Shevuos Shavs and some Shevuos Bitois, some interesting stuff possibly. And here we go. We're going to start on Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph, about somewhere between 5 and 10 lines, I'd say, into Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph at the Mishnah. Ezu Shevuos Shav. What's a Shevuos Shav? So I think technically there are 4 kinds of Shevuos Shavs, though the Mishnah, from what I can tell, is addressing 3 of them. The 4, I believe, are saying that stone is gold. Okay, that's crazy town. Crazy talk. The next is swearing that stone is stone. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Now, this one doesn't seem to be referred to at all. The third one being levatel a mitzvah, to be mevatel mitzvah, and the fourth one being something that's impossible. Like, as we're going to see, like a flying camel. Who's ever seen a flying camel? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Alright, let's go right there. Okay, so here we go. Says the Mishnah, Ezu Shevuos Shav. What is a Shevuos Shav? Nishba l'shanes es hayadua. He makes a shvuah to change that which is known. Something is known, he wants to change that which is known. It's known that a certain pillar is made of stone, and he's swearing that it's gold. It's stone, it's not gold. Shevuos Shav. V'la isha u isha. V'la isha she'ish. It's known about a certain person that they are a man, and this fellow is swearing that they are a woman, or vice versa. Nishba al davar she'i efshir lo. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the, swearing about one thing that it's something else, right? About a stone that is gold. Now, nishba al davar she'i efshir lo, if he swears about something that's impossible. If I didn't see a camel that's flying in the sky, or a snake as large as the beam of an olive press, the Gemara is going to talk about that one a little bit more. But okay, right? If you swear about something that's impossible, that's a Shevuos Shav. Right? If you say to witnesses, "Hey, come, I need you to testify for me," and they swear that they're not Shevuah, we are not going to testify for you. I think that this would be different than a Shevuos Ha'edus. Shevuos Ha'edus, I think, would be that they swear that they don't know any testimony when they do, in fact, no testimony. Here, they seem to not be denying the fact that they know testimony. They just swear that they're not going to testify, and that's levatel es hamitzvah. So nishba levatel es hamitzvah, right? So if he swears to be mevatel a mitzvah, that's a Shevuos Shav. Shelo laso sukkah, shelo lito lulav, shelo laniach tefillin. Right? If he makes a shvuah that he's not gonna make a sukkah, he's not gonna take his lulav, he's not gonna put on tefillin. Zoi Shevuos Shav. Okay, so that's like nishba levatel es mitzvah. So those are all examples of Shevuos Shavs. Zoi Shevuos Shav shechayav al zdeina makis v'ashigagos apotis. The Shevuos Shav, the punishment for Shevuos Shav is if you did it intentionally, so we hit you, and if you did it accidentally, you are patur. Shevuos ochal kikar zo. If a person says Shevuos ochal kikar zo, okay, so as we know, it's a Shevuos bitui. Okay, so he's got to do it. Shevuos shelo ochaleno. But then, after making a Shevuah that he's going to eat this loaf of bread, he then makes a Shevuah that he's not going to eat it. Whew. So interestingly, so the first one's a Shevuos Bitoy, right? He makes a Shevuah that he's going to eat the bread. Shevuos Bitoy. So now there's he created a mitzvah there's a mitzvah for him to now eat the bread. He needs to eat it. He said he's going to eat the bread. He needs to do it. If he now makes a Shevuah that I'm not going to eat the bread, it's Shevuah levatal as a mitzvah. He has a chiyuv now to eat the bread, and he makes a Shevuah that he's not going to do it. It's Shevuah levatal as a mitzvah. So Rishon Shevuah is Bitoy, Vashniya Shevuah is Shav, as I just said, right? The first Shevuah She'ochal Kikar Zo, is a Shevuah Bitoy. Shevuah Shelo Ochalena is now Shevuah levatal as a mitzvah. It's a Shevuah Shav. Ochla, if he ate it, okay, he was supposed to eat it. So over al Shevuah Shav, so he violated a Shevuah Shav because you're not allowed to make a Shevuah levatal as a mitzvah. Right? That was a Shevuah Shav. Lo achala, if he didn't eat it, so he had made a shvuah that he was going to eat it. If he doesn't eat it, so then over Shevuos Bitoy, he violates his Shevuos Bitoy. He said he made a shvuah that he was going to eat the bread, and he didn't do it. So he's in violation of that Shevuos Bitoy. Exciting times here at Babylon Talmud. Says the Gemara, Amar Ulavu Shenikar Legimol Bnei Udam. Says Ula that when if he makes a shvuah that a column of stone is gold, so as a Shevuah Shav, it's a Shevuah Shav if it's known to at least 3 people that it's in fact a stone column. If it's not known to 3 people, so then it would be a Shevuah Sheker, said Rashi points out. Nishba al dover shi efshir lo im lo reisi gamo perech ba'avir. If he makes a shvuah about something that's impossible, for example, makes a shvuah that if I didn't see a camel flying through the skies and through the air, shvuah isi lo ka'amar, ma'im lo ra'isi. So the Gemara points out that it's a little strange that the Mishnah doesn't say that shvuah shav is shvuah shera'isi gamo perech ba'avir. It doesn't say if he makes a shvuah that I saw a camel flying in the air. It says Shvuah im lo ra'isi, Shvuah that I didn't see. Well, of course you didn't see it, so it's impossible. So Abaye Omar Tani Shvuah shera'isi. Rather say Shvuah that I did see a camel flying through the air. Rav Omar Ba'omar ye osru kol perish sheba oilam olai im lo ra'isi gamo perech ba'avir. Rava, I think often sometimes Rava will change around the words in Mishnahs and stuff, but I think more often than not, I think Rava likes to try to not change words. So he basically says, yeah, it is imlo ra'isi, but what he's saying is all of the fruits in the world will be usher to me if I didn't see a camel flying in the air. A little bit of a double negative kind of thing over there, but the point is saying, I did see a camel flying through the air, and if I didn't, then all the fruits in the world are also to me. Chaved, let me tell you something. Every so often I have to remind you about the Paris of Eretz Yisrael. I'll give you an update. Here is the update on the Paris of Eretz Yisrael. Watermelon season, friends. Watermelon season. Come to Eretz Yisrael, get a watermelon, make a shechianu. Also melon season, honeydew, cantaloupe, that kind of stuff. Come to Eretz Yisrael, they're very gishmak right now. Come, make a shechianu, very delicious stuff. I noticed that cherries are coming out. Cherry season is beginning. Also, very gishmak. Hopefully the figs are going to be coming soon. Last year there was a very small fig season, probably due to the harassment of our neighbors close and far. But anyways, hopefully, I haven't seen figs yet, but hopefully we'll have some figs soon. Those tend to be extremely gishmak. And peaches and nectarines are also starting to hit the shelves in Shuk Machne Yehuda. It's a good time to be in Eretz Yisrael. Come to Eretz Yisrael, make go to Shuk Machne Yehuda, buy some fruits, make shechianus. Back to our Gemara. So now he says that if he didn't see a camel flying through the air, then all the fruits are going to be also to him. I hope he excluded, somehow made some kind of exception for the Paris of Eretz Yisrael. He's missing out on the geschmack stuff in Shuk Machne Yehuda right now. Okay, so now Okay, one second. Rub my eyes. Ma, you don't get an apology for that. Okay. Omar le Ravina Ravashis. Now Ravina makes an interesting suggestion to Ravashi. The suggestion being, V'tilma gavra tzipora rabba chazi v'asik lishma gamla v'chikamishhtaba adaite didei ishtiba. You hear this guy? Ravina suggests to Ravashi, well, let me suggest the following. What if, yeah, sure, he didn't see what we would consider to be a camel flying through the air, but maybe what he saw was a large bird flying through the air, and he decided that he was going to create a language. Right? Let's say his name was Reuven. So he created a language called Reubenru. And in Reubenru, when you could call a big bird a camel. So when he makes a shvua, essentially that he saw a camel flying in the air, a camel in Hebrew is the word for big birds. So maybe the point is, maybe it isn't a shvua shav, because maybe he's talking up in his own in his mind what he considers to be a camel, which you might consider to be a bird. But so when he said that he saw a camel, he didn't mean the camel that we call camel, the camel in his mind, which was really a bird, and he did really see that. Okay, again, I'm reading that again. Ravina suggests to Ravashi, Vidilma, maybe I got, but this guy, Reuven, Tzipara Rabba Chazi, he saw a big bird flying through the air, and he decided that he was going to decide that this big bird is not called a big bird. This big bird is called a camel. And when he swore that he saw a camel flying through the air, technically in his mind he did, because he refers to what he saw as a camel. He swore based on his own thoughts. So yeah, he did say camel, but the intention was a big bird. So what's the problem with that? And if you're going to say, yeah, but the thing is we go based on what he says, and if you're going to suggest, well, the thing is we go based on what he says, we don't go based on what's going on in his own noggin. Right. We can't just when people are swearing, we can't just assume that the words that are coming out of their mouths might be different than what it actually means. We can't do that. We have to go based on what they say. And if the words that came out of his mouth were camel flying in the air, that is how we treat it. I don't care what he's thinking about. But the thing is, that we learn in a brayso. This is going to be from Perek Shevuos Hadayonin. Tomorrow we're starting Shevuos HaEdus. After Perek Shevuos HaEdus is going to be Shevuos HaPikodin. And then after Shevuos HaPikodin is going to be Shevuos Hadayonin. In Perek Shevuos Hadayonin, it says, Kishmashbin Eisei, when they make him swear in Bezdin, Omrim lo, they say to him, Haviyodei, you should know, Shaloi al da'atcho, onu mashbin oscho. They say to him, now listen, when you're going to make a shvua right now, this shvua is not based on what's going on in your head. Ela, so it says al datenu, there's different cases, it says al das hamokim, I like that better. El al das hamokim, vel al das bezdin, rather, you are making a shvua not based on what's going on in your noggin, but based on the das of the Rabbeinu Shalom, and based on the das of Bezdin, and whatever you say is going to be interpreted as we interpret it. It's not based on what's going on in your noggin. Now, my time, why do the Dayanim feel the need to have to clarify this point? Is it not because otherwise, by default, it would go based on what's in his noggin? Lab mishum damina dilma is kundri yoivle. Is it not because we're concerned that maybe Shimon's taking Reuven to Bezdin? Shimon's claiming from Reuven, you owe me 100 zuzes. Is it not? Are we not concerned that Reuven's going to say, oh, I paid you back 100 zuzes, but really what Reuven gave Shimon was 100 random pieces of wood. But in Ruvain's mind, he decided that these random pieces of wood are called zuzis. And that when he swears, he's going to be swearing based on what he calls zuzis, which are really just random pieces of wood. So the question is, right, so again, what's Ravina's question to Rav Ashi? Ravina's question is, why do we assume that when he says that he saw a camel flying through the air, that it means that he saw a camel flying through the air and it's a Shevuos Shav? Maybe he decided in his mind that camel is another word for a bird. And maybe he's just saying that a bird was flying through the air. What's wrong with that? Right? And if you can say, well, we can't go based on what's going on in his head. Well, we seem to be saying in Perek Shevuos HaDayanim that Bezdin has to go out of their way to say, hey, this is not based on what's going on in your head. Why do they have to feel the need to say that? If it was obvious, then they shouldn't have to say it. Is it not because by default a shvua can be based on what's going on in your head? And therefore, why can't we say that when he says that he saw a camel flying in the air, maybe it means that he saw a bird flying in the air, but he calls birds camels. Right? So no, that's not the reason. The reason why Bezdin feels the need to say it's not based on what's going on in your mind, it's not because maybe he's making up his own words in his own language. Rather, it's because of the reed of Rava. Who can tell me what the reed of Rava is? The reed of Rava is a concern that maybe Reuven is a son of a gun. And we're not concerned that maybe he made up his own language with his own words. No. You know what we're concerned about? We're concerned that maybe Reuven, so again, Shimon lent Reuven 100 zuzis. We're concerned that maybe what Reuven did was he played a game where he took 100 zuzis and he put it inside of a reed. And he gives the reed to Shimon. Now Shimon doesn't know that his 100 zuzis are inside the reed. Reuven gives the reed to Shimon, says, Shimon, hey buddy, old pal, can you watch this for me for a few days? And Shimon says, yeah, sure, he's the nice guy that he is. Shimon thinks that all he has is a reed. He's unaware that in the reed is actually 100 zuzis. Reuven now goes to Bezdin and he swears, Shimon, I gave you 100 zuzis. And technically he did. Right now in Shimon's house are 100 zuzis. The thing is, he gave it to Shimon as a pikadon inside of a reed, and Shimon has no clue that he actually has it. So technically, Reuven, he's telling the truth. He did give Shimon the 100 zuzis, but in a totally sneaky way, and in a way that he's planning to take it right back afterwards. So Bezdin therefore needs to say, hey, don't play games. It's not based on, what you have in mind that I paid him back, even though technically I'm getting it. No shtuyot, no games. It's based on our interpretations, i.e. that if you say that you paid back Shimon 100 zuz, but that's going to be interpreted as we interpret it, which is that you took 100 zuzes and you gave it to Shimon in an obvious way. But it is not because, right, it's not necessary that we assume that he can make up his own language and his own intentions. Toshma, come in here. V'ek the Gemara. V'chein matzinu k'sheshbia Moshe es Yisrael. We also find when Moses oathed the Yidden. He said to the Yidden, De'u shalei al datchem ani mashbe'eschem. I'm not making you swear to follow the Torah based on your own da'as, el al das amokim ve'al daiti, based on the das of the Rebbeinu Shalom and my das. So again, we have the same question. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu feel the need to have to say it's not based on your das? Is it not, right? Is it not that there's a concern that maybe when they make a shvuah it would be based on their own interpretations in their own minds? Why is he saying, right, why? Let him push and say to them, Kimu Maidu Amar Lo. Let Moses just say to the Yidden, be Mekayim, that which God said. Shouldn't that have just been enough? So, is it not because, if he would say that, then maybe they would say Eloah, but they would define that in their minds as being avodah zarah, and that's why you have to say not based on da'atchem. So doesn't that imply that there is a real concern that you can use your own intentions when it comes to Shevuos? And that's why Moses davka to say it's not al da'atchem? No. So the Gemara says that wouldn't actually be a good point, because you could still say that it's not based on what their own intentions are when they say Eloah, because even just the word Eloah technically does mean avodah zarah. For example, it says Eloi kesef Eloi. So even if you just go based on what they literally said, Eloah, that could also just simply mean avodah zarah. So that would not have worked to say kaimu ma'idam Eloah, because they could say that and just be referring to avodah zarah. V'lemlu kaimu Torah. Okay, but let him say to them, just be mekayim the Torah. Why do you have to get into that whole das thing? Well, chada. The thing is, chada Torah. The thing is, Torah is singular. The thing is that there are two Torahs. Torah shebal peh, Torah shebechsav. Okay, but then mekayim shtei Torahs. Okay, so fine. Say, be mekayim two Torahs. Okay, Torah shebechsav and Torah shebal peh. Why do you have to get into the whole das thing? Well, Torah is chatos and Torah is oshrim. If it said two Torahs, I might think the Torah is the Torah of a chatos and the Torah of an oshrim. Kaimu kol Torah kula. So okay, be mekayim kol Torah kula. Okay, avodas kochavim. That could be a reference to avodas kochavim. Damar chamura avodas kochavim shekol hakofir ba kimode b'chol Torah kula. That avodah zarah is so stringent that anybody who's kofir b'avodah zarah, it's like they're mekayim the whole Torah. It has like the equivalency of it's like the weight of the entire Torah in the negative sense. So maybe if you would just say kaimu kol Torah, maybe in their minds that could be kol Torah. That's like avodah zarah, which is like the weight of kol Torah in the negative sense. V'leibelu kaimu mitzvah. Okay, so say be mekayim a mitzvah. Chada mitzvah, that could just be one mitzvah though. Kaimu mitzvahs, so be mekayim mitzvahs. Tarti, that could just be two mitzvahs. Kol ha-mitzvahs kulon, be mekayim all the mitzvahs. Mitzvah tzitzis, maybe that's just the first tzitzis. Don't remember, we said shkula mitzvah tzitzis, connected kol mitzvahs kulon. That mitzvah tzitzis is like all of the mitzvahs. V'leimlu kaimu sheish me'os v'shlosh mitzvahs. Okay, fine. So let him be even more specific. Be mekayim the 613 commandments. Why didn't Moshe just say, be mekayim the 613 commandments? Why did he have to get into the whole das thing? Is it not because you can have your own special intentions when you make Shevuos, and Moshe wanted to prevent that? To which the Gemara says, well, uletaimech, let me counter your challenge with a counter challenge. Lemelu al daiti al dasamakum lomali. Why does Moses have to say it's not based on your das, but on al dasamakum val daiti? Why not just be al daiti, based on how I understand these terms, not based on how you want to define these terms? Based on why do we have to say al das makum? Why is that necessary? Elo kechi delo tavi afar l'shvuosai. Rather, the reason why Moshe says al daiti ve'al das hamakum is just to make it a shvue al das acherim, because shehuder al das acherim ein lo afar. That when you, as we learned in Masechta Makis, although it wasn't super clear there, but anyways, that when you make a shvua al das acherim with others' knowledge, so then you can't undo it ever. So therefore, the reason for al da'atoi v'al das hamakom was to make it a neder al das acherim, or in this case shvua al das acherim, so that it can never be mefer, but it has nothing to do with what their specific intentions might have been. Okay. The Mishnah had continued, if I didn't see a snake like a beam of a olive press, vilo. Wait, why is that impossible? There was this really big snake during the years of Shabar Malka. And there was one snake that was able to eat 13 horse stalls of grain, a lot of grain. There was a humongous snake. So these snakes do exist. Shmuel says B'taruf. Well, it's talking about where it had notches on it, meaning just like the olive press thing will have notches on it. So this was a snake that had notches. So we're saying if a snake doesn't have notches on it, so if he says that it was a snake like a besa, but like the beam of an olive press, i.e. with like notches on it, that's impossible. Kulunami mitra of trifin. What do you mean? All snakes have notches apparently like on their throats. Bishagabo tarif. Yeah, it's talking about where there are notches on the back. Apparently that doesn't happen. And if you swear that you saw a snake with notches on its back, it's impossible. The Mishnah had continued Shevuos she'ochal kikar zo Shevuos shelo ochal lenachule. So he said that if he makes a shvuah that he will eat this loaf of bread, then he makes a shvuah that he won't eat this loaf of bread. So if he eats it, so then it's a shvuas shav. If he doesn't eat it, it's a shvuah. It's a violation of a shvuas bitui. So ashta mishum shvuas bitui michayev mishuas shav lo michayev hare yotzasa shvuah lo shav. To which the Gemara asks, I don't understand. We're saying if he does not, he makes a shvuah that he's going to eat a loaf of bread. Then he makes a shvuah that he's not going to eat the loaf of bread. So if he doesn't eat it, he violates the shvuas bitui that he said that he was going to eat it. But fact the Gemara, he's only in violation of the Shevuos Bitu? What about the fact that he still made a Shevuah Shav? He said, Shevuah Sha'ochal Kikar Zo. Okay, so he needs to do that. And if he doesn't do it, so then he's in violation of that Shevuah, of the Shevuos Bitu. But then he said, Shevuah Sha'ochal Kikar Zo, which was then a Shevuah Shav. It's too late. He already made the Shevuah Shav. What does it mean? If he doesn't eat the bread, he's only chai for the Shevuos Bitu. But what about the fact that he made a Shevuah Shav? So Rabbi Yirmiyah, Tni Afal Shevuos Bitu, I say, also on the Shevuos Bitu. So meaning if he says, I'm going to eat a loaf of bread, and then he says, I'm not going to eat the loaf of bread. So by saying he's not going to eat the loaf of bread, after he already said he's going to, that's memela, a Shevuah Shav, he violated that. If he then does not eat the loaf of bread, he's also in violation of his Shevuos Bitu. Now, for the final Mishnah of the third parak of Masechta Shevuos. Shevuos Bitui Noeges ba'anoshim u'v'anoshim ba'kreivim v'arichokim b'chshenim v'psulin b'fnei bezin v'shlo b'fnei bezin mipi'atzim v'chad. This Mishnah kind of like is very similar to the first Mishnah of Shevuos Eidus, which I'll just read to you quickly part of it. Shevuos Eidus noeges ba'anoshim v'lo ba'anoshim ba'arichokim v'lo ba'krovim. So kilu there by Shevuos Eidus we get into like, it's only shaykh to people who are kosher le'edus. In this Mishnah, which precedes that Mishnah, we say the opposite, how Shevuos Bitui applies to everybody. Okay, Shevuos Bitui, right, so as opposed to Shevuos Edom, which is only for, Shevuos Edus, which is only for people that are kosher le'edus, Shevuos Bitui, right, Shevuos Edus, so Shevuos Bitui is for everybody. Shevuos Bitui ne'eges ba'anoshim u'vanoshim, men, women, whether it's about relatives, I don't know, that maybe I'll give a relative money or something like that. What is it? Going to the ploni? Yeah, okay, right? Whether they are a relative or not a relative, whether it's about I guess somebody who's kosher leidus, posel leidus, maybe even like was it? Yeah, okay, fine. And maybe like Goslin or something who's posel leidus. But okay, Shevuos Bitui applies to all the people. Bifnei bezin v'shalo bifnei bezin. Whether you say that you're going to eat bread or salad in bezdin, outside of bezdin, mipi atzmo, when it is mipi atzmo. Okay, when it is mipi atzmo. What does it mean mipi atzmo? So maybe I'll just say now. There's like, my understanding is that there's basically three kind of ways that you can make a shvuah. Okay, one way that you can make a shvuah is shvuah she'ochal. He literally makes a shvuah that he's going to eat bread or whatever. Okay, so that's mipi atzmo. It's a shvuah she'ochal. It's mipi atzmo. He just made a shvuah that he's going to eat bread. Another way is he says ochal kikar zo. Doesn't say anything about a shvuah. He says ochal kikar zo. So it's not a shvuah. He says ochal kikar zo. But then somebody says, "Mashbiach ha'ani." Do you swear? I'm mashbiach ha'ani. I'm oathing you about it, about eating this bread. And he says, "Amen." He says, "Amen." So that, as it's going to come up in the Gemara, is actually the equivalent of the first version, is also considered mipi atzmo. So whether he says Shevuos she'ochal kikar zo, or whether he says ochal kikar zo, but then somebody says mashbiach ha'ani and he says amen, legally those are both the same. Those are both considered mipi atzmo. They're exactly the same as far as I'm aware. The third way to do it, the third way to kind of phrase the Shvuah, and this would not be considered Shvuah mipi atzmo, but rather mipi acherim, okay? So that would be, if he says ochal kikar zo, he doesn't say Shvuah, he says ochal kikar zo. Somebody says mashbiach ha'ani, and all he does is repeat the first thing that he said before, ochal kikar zo. Again, he says ochal kikar zo. Somebody says mashbiach ha'ani, he says ochal kikar zo. Doesn't say anything about Shvuah, doesn't say amen. So that is mipi acherim. So what the Mishnah is saying right now is that, so we're saying bein bebezdin, where am I? Bein, so bifnei bezdin v'shelo bifnei bezdin, mipi atzmo. So whether the Shevuos bitur is made in bezdin or outside bezdin, and mipi atzmo, and we're talking about a Shevuah mipi atzmo, that he himself made the Shevuah she'ochal kikar zo, for example. And of course, as we know, for Shevuos bitoy, for intentionally violating a Shevuos bitoy, you'll be chayiv makis if you were warned. Right? You said you're not going to eat the bread, and you eat the bread. And by accident, you bring a korban ole v'yored, as we know. Shevuas shav, for example, making a Shevuah that a stone column is gold. Neges ba'anoshim u'vanoshim, men, women, v'archokim, v'akrovim, relatives, distance, non-relatives, b'kshen, v'psulin, whether I guess kosher ladies, posher ladies, doesn't matter. I assume that we're talking about like you're making a Shevuah about them, about maybe like their gender or something like that. Okay. What is yeah, okay. B'fnei bezdin v'shelo b'fnei bezdin. Whether it's in front, whether the Shevuah shav is made in bezdin or outside of bezdin. Umipi atzmo, and we're talking about mipi atzmo, that he himself makes the Shevuah. Now, okay, and for intentionally making a Shevuah shav, you chayiv makis, and by accident you are potter. There's no korban. Now, achazo v'achazo, both by Shevuas bitoy and by Shevuas shav, hamushba mipi acherim, if he's mushba mipi acherim. Now, I had said a few minutes ago that mushba mipi acherim is basically, he says ochal kikar zo without saying Shevuah, and then somebody says mashbiach ha'ani, and all he says is, again, he says ochal kikar zo. But the interesting thing is that actually when the Mishnah, as you're going to see in a second, it says mushba mipi acherim, right now it's actually referring to the scenario where he says amen, even though legally that's actually the same thing as mushba mipi atzmo. But now, so mushba mipi acherim chayiv, add the word ketzad, lo achalti ayom, if he says, well, I didn't eat today, doesn't make a shvuah, but he says, I didn't eat today, v'lo nachni tefillin today, ayom, or I didn't put on tefillin today, okay, mashbiach ha'ani, right, do, I don't know how to exactly define that. How did you define mashbiach ha'ani? That's like a good way to, mashbiach ha'ani, I adjure you, oh, that's such a terrible word. But like it's not though like do you swear? It's but I'm swearing you. Yeah, that technically speaking, I'm swearing you is probably not a thing. That's probably like in Reuben. But well, we have, what do we call it? Balbon Talmudish? Balbon Talmudru. Balbon Talmudru. In Babylon or Babelish, what did we call our language that we made up? Anyways, in our language we can call I swear you, and he says amen. Okay, mashbiach ani, I swear you. Amen, he says amen, chayiv. So then he will taka be chayiv in that case as well. Okay, so whether he says Shevuah she'ochal kikar zo, or whether he says ochal kikar zo, mashbiach ani v'amar amen, in both those scenarios, it would be a Shevuas bitoy. Okay. Says the Gemara, Amar Shmuel, Kol ha'oneh omen achar Shevuah kemoitzi Shevuah mipiv dami. Says Shmuel, anybody who says amen after a shvua, it's as if he made the shvua himself, as I said a minute ago. Right? So if he says ochal kikar zo, somebody says mashbiach ha'ani, and he responds amen, it's the equivalent as if he said shvua she'ochal kikar zo. Okay? Tichsiv, as the pasuk says, by sota v'amar isha amen amen. Right? By sota, for example, they read out the whole curse. Right? The whole Allah, the whole oath, curse. And what does she say? She says amen. And it's as though she made the she said it herself. Amar Papa says a Papa mishmei the Rav masnisun uvaisa nami deka. Rav Papa says the name of Rava that you can ask a question from the following Mishnah and a Brisa, right? There's a Mishnah and a Brisa that we're about to quote that contradict each other, and the solution to the contradiction, so it's kind of between or from the Mishnah and the Brisa, from the resolution of the question from the Mishnah and the Brisa, we can arrive at the same conclusion. Here is that question. It refers to Shevuos HaEdus that we're going to start learning about tomorrow. Dikatani, that it says Shevuos HaEdus. When it comes to Shevuos HaEdus, so that is, for example, Shimon lent 100 zuzas to Ruvain. Levi and Yehuda were witnesses. So Shimon says to Levi and Yehuda, hey, can you come and testify for me? Right? You're my witnesses. Come and testify for me. And Shevuos she'ein anu yodin licha edus. So whatever it. Where's that Mishnah that says that? Okay, fine. Shevuos she'ein anu yodin licha edus. They swear that they don't know what he's talking about. Okay, so that's Shevuos HaEdus. So Shevuos HaEdus, noheges ba'anoshim velo ba'anoshim. It's specifically for men, not for women, because women are psulas le'edus. B'rechokim velo b'krovim, only non-relatives, not relatives, because they're posel le'edus. B'ksherin velo b'psulin, not with like thieves. Again, they have to be people that are kosher le'edus. Men noheges elo b'ru'uyin l'ha'id. Okay, it's only for people that are ru'uyin l'ha'id. Ubifnei bezdin v'shelo bifnei bezdin. Okay, whether this a dialogue between Shimon and Levi and Yehuda happens in Bezdin or outside of Bezdin. Mipi atzmo. Now that is if it's mipi atzmo, right? If they say Shevuos she'ein anu yodin l'cha edus. However, umipi acherim einon chayavin ad shichbru bo'en bebezdin. Divrei Meir. But if it's mipi acherim, then it's not. Then if it's outside of Bezdin, so it's irrelevant. It would have to dafka be in Bezdin. Okay, so you have to define what's the deal with that mipi acherim. V'tanya b'braysim, we're learning a braysim Shevuos HaEdus keitzad. Tell me about Shevuos HaEdus. Amar le'edim, he says to witnesses, bo va'iduni shvua she'ein anu yodin l'cha edus. And they say, Shevuos she'ein anu yodin l'cha edus. We swear that we don't know testimony. O she'amru, or they said, ein anu yodin l'cha edus. They don't say Shvuah, but they say, ein anu yodin l'cha edus. Mashbi'a ani alechem, I swear you. V'amru amen, and they said amen. Well, in that case, bein b'fnei bezdin, bein shelo b'fnei bezdin. Bein b'fnei bezdin, bein shelo b'fnei bezdin. Bein mipi atzmo, bein mipi acherim. And whether it's from themselves or from others, kem shekafru bohem chayavin divrei Meir. Once they are kofer, then they are chayavin according to Reb Meir. Kashin adadi. Now these two brises contradict each other. On the one hand, the first brisa said, if it's mipi acherim, so then they would have to be kofar in Bezdin, not outside of Bezdin. Yet the second brisa said that bein bifnei Bezdin, bein shelo bifnei Bezdin, bein mipi atzmo, bein mipi acherim, kev shekofar beim chayavim. That whether it's mipi atzmo, whether it's mipi acherim, whether it's in Bezdin, whether it's outside of Bezdin, they're chayiv. So what's the deal? So lav shmamina hadu ana amen hadu lo ana amen shmamina. Rather, in the brisa, where it says whether in front of Bezdin, whether not in front of Bezdin, whether it's Pi Atzmo, whether it's Pi Acherim, it's because in the brisa it explicitly said, Ein ani yodun l'cha edus, mashbia, what is that? Mashbia ani aleichem, what do you say? Mashbia ani aleichem, and they said amen. So they said amen. Now in the Mishnah, they had said that if it's mipi acherim, it would have to be in Bezdin. It can't be outside of Bezdin. It's because there they didn't say amen. So we see that when they say amen, it becomes this. It's the equivalent as mipi atzmo. And when they don't say amen, then it's keilu mipi acherim. So again, going back to the kind of the distinctions we have, right? So if we use Shevuos Edus as our example, right? So Shvuah she'einanu yodun l'cha edus. So that's mipi atzmon. That's a shvuah. Or if they say einanu yodun l'cha edus, and he says mashbia ani aleichem, and they say amen, that's the legal equivalent. And mipi acherim, which would have to be in Bezdin, is if they say einanu yodun l'cha edus, they don't say anything about shvuah. He says mashbia ani aleichem, and all they do is repeat einanu yodun l'cha edus. They don't say amen. So they would have to be kofar in Bezdin, outside of Bezdin, that wouldn't count. So there's a difference between if they say amen or not. Amr Ravina says, Ravina mishmei derava masnisen dehocha namideka. It could also be inferred from our Mishnah here, because in our Mishnah, what does it say? The katani shvuas bitoy nueges ba'anoshim uvanoshim. Shvuas bitoy is men, women, baruchokim, bakrovim, relatives, non-relatives, bekshen v'psulin, kosher witnesses, postal witnesses, doesn't matter. Bein bebezdin, where people kosher ladies, postal ladies. Bein bebezdin v'shalom b'fnei bezdin, whether it's in bezdin, outside of bezdin, mipi atzmo, but it has to be mipi atzmo. Mipi atzmo in, mipi acherim lo, but not mipi acherim. But then it says v'katani sefer, it says at the end of the Mishnah, zevazim mushma mipi acherim chayiv. However, when it comes to Shvuas Bitu, Shvuas Shav, Mujma Pi Acherim is also Chayiv. Kashin Adadi. On the one hand we're saying, you're only Chayiv Pi Atzmo, on the other hand we're saying, Pi Acherim you're Chayiv. Lav Shmamino do ana amen, ad lo ana amen. Rather, the difference is, it depends. If you say amen, so then we're saying Mujma Pi Acherim, you'll be Chayiv if you said amen. However, if you didn't say amen, you just repeated what you had initially said, then you would be potter. And ve'ela Shmuel ma'ika majmelon. Well, then what's the big chiddush of Shmuel? It's already from Mishnah's Brises. Dukya demasnis and kamajmelon. What Shmuel is teaching us is the diuk of our Mishnah. We just read into our Mishnah about whether you say amen, whether you don't say amen. So Shmuel was just kind of like drawing that out and saying it explicitly, that if you say amen, it's the equivalent as if you said it yourself. Hadron Olach Shevuos Shtayim Cheve. That was Avchav Tes of Masechta Shevuos. We talked about Shevuos Shavs and what, potentially relying on people's own languages and thoughts in Shevuos, which we kind of didn't necessarily accept. And then we wrapped up the Perek, talking about Shevuos Bitois, as well as Shtikol Shevuos Shav, and we started talking about Mishal Atzma, Mishal Acherim. Tomorrow we're going to continue Masechta Shevuos with the fourth Perek of Masechta Shevuos, Shevuos Ha'edus. Cheers.